Pine Hollow, Wyoming Territory, winter of 1881. Snow had fallen for 3 straight days. The wind had flattened it into white sheets across the open land, scarring the horizon where fences had once stood. The creek was locked solid under ice, and the cottonwoods groaned beneath their weight. The rider came late in the day, his horse lathered and dark with sweat despite the cold. He had not spoken in hours. His face was raw from windburn, his gloved hands cracked where the seams split. He kept his head down, one eye on the trail, the other on the ridge that sloped toward the distant outline of town. But there was no town now, not really. Just what the fire hadn't taken. The wind turned, shoving snow like smoke across his path, and something stopped him. Not a sound. A feeling, like the air had shifted. Then he heard it. Mr. Just that. One word. Barely a whisper, but enough. He reined in. The horse stamped, ears back. A sagging cottonwood leaned against the weight of the storm, its limbs tangled with brush and a broken wagon. Beside it, half buried in snow, a figure stood. Thin, still, no coat. Bare arms wrapped around herself, blue from the cold. At her feet, 5 smaller forms clustered close, all swaddled in scraps, blankets, feed sacks, whatever they'd had left. The man dismounted without a word. His legs trembled when his boots hit the ground. His right hand dropped to the butt of his pistol, not out of threat habit. The woman did not move. Her lips were cracked, nose bloodied from the cold, but her eyes locked on his like she meant to drag the truth from him before the storm could. "Don't want nothing from you," she said, voice hoarse. But the little one's near froze. "I can't." She stopped herself. He didn't answer, just walked forward, slow, unstrapping the bedroll from his saddle. He peeled off his coat and laid it over the youngest child, who didn't stir. They made no fire. The wind would eat it. He didn't ask what happened to the wagon or the man who should have been driving it. He just knelt beside the oldest child, a girl of maybe 10, and offered her a strip of dried meat from his saddlebag. She took it without speaking. The woman watched him the whole time. Finally he looked up. "You got a name, Claire. Where were you headed?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Don't know anymore." He nodded once, slow, then looked out toward the storm again. "You walkin'?" She didn't answer. Didn't need to. He stood, stretched out his legs, then reached for the second blanket tied behind his saddle. His back ached from the cold and from the riding, but he didn't let it show. "You and the little ones ride," he said. "Horse'll carry it. I ain't leaving the wagon. You stay, you die." Claire looked down at her children. The oldest was blinking slow now, eyes heavy. The littlest, swaddled in his coat, had stopped crying. She nodded. Just once. He moved fast after that, pulling children up one by one, tying them to his bedroll and patting the horse's back with whatever cloth was dry enough. Claire didn't cry. She didn't ask who he was. Just lifted each child like she'd done it 1,000 times, and now her arms didn't even belong to her. When all 5 were secure, he turned to her. "You ride too." She didn't argue. He lifted her with both hands, grunting with the weight and the effort. Then he led the horse by foot, walking beside them as the snow deepened. They didn't speak for a long time. Behind them the storm swallowed the wagon whole. The trail vanished beneath the snow not long after they started. The horse sank deeper with each step, flanks shivering, hooves crunching through ice crust to the bitter ground beneath. The man's boots filled with snow. His knees burned, but he kept walking. Claire clung to the saddle horn, one hand on her youngest's back. Her hair had iced where the snow met the sweat on her neck, and her skirts were soaked through. Every few minutes she'd reach to touch each child in turn, like she had to remind herself they were still there, still breathing. They crested a rise near dusk, and he paused, chest heaving. The wind had died some, but the cold settled harder in its place. He looked back. The world behind them had gone white. No tracks. No proof they'd ever been there. He turned to Claire. "There's a line shack a few miles east. Belonged to the old Sims ranch before the bank took it. If it's still standing, we'll make it by night." Claire didn't respond. She nodded once, but her eyes were glazed. The children had stopped fussing. They were too cold for it now. He turned, pulling the reins, urging the horse forward. They reached the shack near nightfall, just as the sky opened again. Snow fell fast, thick, swirling sideways as the wind picked up once more. The shack leaned westward, its roof-sagging door hanging by a single hinge. But it was shelter. He kicked the door open with one stiff leg and stepped inside. It smelled of old wood and dust. A rusted stove sat in the corner, cold and useless without fuel. He brought the children in first, one by one, untying them with numbed fingers and carrying them to the far wall where the wind didn't reach as hard. Claire followed, stumbling barely upright. He stripped his gloves and began building a nest from what was inside dry grass in a corner, an old grain sack, a broken chair he smashed against the wall to make kindling. No matches. But he had flint and a bit of lamp oil in his saddlebag. It took time. Too much. His fingers were stiff and clumsy, and the spark refused to catch. Claire crouched beside him, silent, holding her youngest in her lap. She didn't blink. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then the fire caught. It flared small at first, then brighter. The light jumped against the boards, casting long shadows on the children's faces. He didn't smile, just sat back on his heels and let out a breath that hurt coming out. One of the little boys whimpered, then coughed. Claire leaned over him. The man turned to her. "How long since they ate?" "A day," she said, barely audible. "Maybe 2. We had bread. Till the snow came." He pulled the rest of his jerky and a pouch of oats from the saddlebag, set it beside her. "It's not much. You take it." "What about you?" "I ain't got 6 mouths to feed." She stared at him for a long moment, something like defiance in her eyes. But then she took the food, tore small strips, gave them first to the quietest children, then the others. The fire snapped. Wind howled outside. Inside there was warmth, at least for a while. She sat beside the fire, legs tucked under her fingers, wrapped tight around her middle child's hand. He sat across from her, back against the wall, hat low over his face. Neither of them spoke. The wind would cover their tracks by morning. No one would know they'd passed this way. But they were warm and alive. That was something. If the night felt close, subscribe for the morning. The children slept first. One by one their breathing slowed, curled against each other like pups, the heat from the fire pushing the cold just far enough to let them rest. Claire stayed upright, shoulders stiff, arms folded tight across her chest. The man sat across from her, still hat in his lap now, face drawn in the firelight. He looked younger without the brim shadowing his eyes, though the lines were cut deep around the mouth, across the forehead. Not the lines of age so much as of silence, of things carried too long. Claire broke the quiet. "They're not all mine by blood." His eyes lifted. "My sister died 2 winters back. Diphtheria. Her husband left not long after." She reached to touch the smallest child's hair, slow and gentle. "So I took 'em in. Figured that's what family's for." He nodded. Didn't speak. "My husband left this fall. Said he was headed to find work near Cheyenne. He never sent word. When the cold came, we ran out of flour, then coal." She looked into the fire like it might answer something. "I sold what I could. Thought we'd make it to a cousin's place south of here. Wagon busted 3 days back. Lost the mule that night." The man shifted, rubbed his palms together near the fire. "You don't owe me your story," he said. Claire looked at him. Ain't for you. Just helps to say it out loud sometimes. He nodded again. I was married once, he said after a pause. Before the war. She watched him but said nothing. She took sick while I was off fighting. No telegram, no letter. I came back to find her buried and the house sold out from under us. Claire's gaze softened. Not pity. Recognition. He looked away. I been riding ever since. Nowhere in particular. They sat with that for a while. Not as two strangers, but as people who knew how it felt to have the ground pulled out from under them. Outside the wind kept on. He reached for the saddlebag again, pulled out a flask. Thought better of it then, handed it to her. She took a sip. Winced. Passed it back. You got a name, she asked. Levy. Claire nodded, settling the word in her mind like a stone on a riverbed. Something solid. They sat until the fire dwindled low. He rose, checked the boards for drafts, stuffed what he could in the cracks. Then he took off his coat and laid it over two of the children. Claire watched him move slow but steady, like every action had been earned through pain. When he finished, he sat again closer to the fire now. She leaned back against the wall, her eyes closing. You saved us, she said. He didn't answer. But after a while he spoke again, his voice low. You saved yourself. I just didn't ride past. They slept in shifts that night. Neither trusted the fire to last without tending, and neither trusted sleep to come all at once. But when Claire looked over at him near dawn, she found Levi dozing upright, one hand resting near the fire, the other loose at his side like he'd let go of something heavy. The storm had passed, and for the first time in days the wind was quiet. The sun rose pale and distant, more suggestion than warmth, but light came through the warped boards of the shack, painting narrow gold lines across the dirt floor. Claire blinked, awake to the sound of Levy splitting more wood from the broken chair, his shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow, steam rising from his breath in the cold air. The children stirred beside her, dry for the first time in days. Their cheeks pinked up a little in the morning light. The youngest, still swaddled in Levi's coat, made a small sound, not quite a cry, but enough to make Claire lean over and touch his cheek. He was warm. Claire sat up slowly, every bone in her back protesting. Her hands were stiff, but when she flexed them, she could feel blood moving again. Levi glanced at her. You rest some? Some. He nodded toward the corner. Found a few old tins in a crate. Cornmeal and beans. Might be just enough for breakfast. He didn't ask for thanks, and she didn't offer it. Not because she wasn't grateful, but because something heavier passed between them now. Not duty. Not charity. Just the recognition of what it meant to see someone close to breaking and decide not to let them. Claire moved to stir the children awake, gently rubbing their backs, whispering each name. Mama, one of the middle boys mumbled. Her hand stilled for half a second. Then she kissed his forehead. I'm here, baby. Levi built the fire higher, and Claire helped stir the food over the flame, using the back of a rusted spoon and the edge of her skirt to lift the hot handle. The scent of beans hit the air, and the children perked up like wildflowers after rain. When the meal was passed around, it was quiet. They ate with slow, careful bites, eyes wide, watching one another. Watching Levy. Afterward, the two oldest helped fold blankets and tidy the scraps. Claire and Levy stepped outside. The world had changed again. Where there had been only white now, the sky was blue in patches. The wind had calmed to a low moan through the trees, and the drifts shimmered like frozen sand dunes. In the far distance beyond the scrub, the rise of hills marked where the old road must have run. Levi pulled a glove tight. There's a town west of here. Little place. Had a doctor last I passed through. Claire nodded. How far? Maybe 10 miles? She looked back into the shack. You think they'll make it? He studied her face before answering. I think they've made it this far. That counts for something. She looked down, then out at the road again. I'll walk, she said. No, he replied. You ride? I'll walk. We can switch. He gave a half smile. We'll figure it. They packed up what little they had. The broken chair left in pieces beside the fire. The food tins cleaned and tied to the saddle. He lifted the children up again, gentler this time, more like a father might, though he never said so. Claire mounted last. As they moved away from the shack, Levi walked beside the horse, one hand on the reins, the other steadying the smallest child against Claire's hip. For a long while no one spoke. Then Claire said soft, You ever think about stopping somewhere? Levi didn't look at her. Sometimes. What stops you? He paused, not knowing if there's anything worth stopping for. Claire looked ahead, the weight of her children pressed to her body, the trail stretched long and unknown. Well, she said, you can ride on after we get there. But if you decide not to, there'll be breakfast. And names to learn. Levy's step faltered just once. Then he walked on. The sun rose higher behind them, casting long shadows across the snow. They moved slow, but they moved together. By noon, the snow had softened enough for the horse to make steady ground. The sun broke clear, turning the crusted drifts into mirrors. It was bright enough to sting, and Levi squinted against the glare, sweat trickling despite the cold. Claire had pulled her shawl low to shield the baby's face, but her own skin had begun to pink again with life. The other children had gone quiet, lulled by motion and exhaustion. The eldest sat upright, watching Levi as he walked beside them, her small hands wrapped tight around the saddle horn. He felt her stare but didn't speak. The land rolled out flat, then lifted again, and there, barely a smudge on the horizon, came the slanted rooftops of a town. Smoke rose in thin spirals from two chimneys. Nothing big. A general store, maybe a stable, a church if it hadn't gone broke. But it was enough. Levy pointed. That's it. We'll make it before dark if we keep pace. Claire followed his gaze. She didn't smile, just closed her eyes a moment and let out a breath she'd been holding since the day her husband left. They pushed on. Closer to dusk, the trail narrowed where a creek crossed the land. The water had cracked through the ice in places, black and fast beneath. Levi paused, studying it. I'll lead the horse across. You just hold steady. Claire nodded, shifting the children's weight carefully. The horse hesitated at the edge, ears twitching, but Levi murmured low and steady, guiding it step by step across the slick stone. Halfway over, the youngest boy whimpered. Levi turned quick, just in time to see Claire reach behind her, grab hold before he could slip. Got you, she whispered. The boy clung to her back, face buried in her hair. Once across, Levi let out a breath. Claire met his eyes. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. By the time they reached the town's edge, the sun had dipped behind the hills. Shadows stretched long across the hard-packed dirt street. Smoke drifted from a stovepipe above the doctor's building, still marked by a faded red cross painted onto a plank. Levi knocked once, then again. Heavy footsteps inside. A man opened the door, silver-haired and tired-eyed, but kind enough to look first at the children. Levi didn't explain much, just enough. The doctor waved them in. Within minutes, the children were wrapped in clean blankets near the fire, given warm broth, and checked for fever. Claire stood near the door, hands folded tight, watching, ready to fight if she had to. The doctor stepped over, voice quiet. They'll be all right. Some frostbite on the littlest, but he'll keep the toes. Claire nodded once, swallowed hard. The doctor looked at Levi. You, their father. Levi opened his mouth, then closed it. Glanced at Claire. No, she said. He just didn't ride past. The doctor raised an eyebrow, but he didn't ask more. That night the children slept in a back room. Levy sat on the front step, hat in his hands, watching the moon rise over the snowbound roofs. Claire came out after a while, a wool coat draped over her shoulders, her hair still damp from where she'd washed in the basin. She sat beside him, close but not touching. "Town's quiet," she said. He nodded. "Most are this time of year. I think we'll stay a while. See what's here." He looked over at her, his face unreadable in the dark. "You should stay too." She said it plain. No plea in it. Just a statement. A chance laid at his feet. Levi didn't answer right away. Just turned his eyes up toward the sky, stars sharp and cold above them. "I've been moving so long," he said finally, "I forgot what still feels like." Claire leaned forward, resting her arms on her knees. "Maybe it's time to remember." He glanced at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, there was something open in his face. Not soft exactly, but unguarded. "I ain't much good at staying," he said. "You're good at showing up," she said. "That's more than most." Levi looked down the quiet street, then at the light in the window where the children slept. "I'll stay the night," he said. "All right. And maybe tomorrow." Claire smiled, small and steady. "That's how it starts." The moon climbed higher, cold and clear, but for the first time in weeks, neither of them felt it. Inside, the fire burned low, and for now they were safe. Morning came slow and gold. Light stretched through the frosted window panes, brushing the faces of the children where they lay in a tangle of quilts. One stirred, then another, and before long the room held the soft murmur of waking bodies, stretching limbs, and a girl's voice asking if breakfast would come. Claire had risen early. She stood at the stove in the back kitchen of the doctor's building, boiling oats, with the last of the flour and a bit of dried apple the nurse had brought over at dawn. She moved with quiet focus, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled past the elbow. Not hurried, but sure, like her body remembered what it meant to build something normal from whatever scraps were left. Levi sat by the front window, boots planted wide, a mug of weak coffee in his hands. He hadn't said much, but he hadn't left either. He'd meant to. He'd risen early too, tied up his saddle, even checked the cinch. But when he looked back at the door, heard the sounds of children laughing again, light as birdsong, it caught him wrong. Or right. He couldn't tell. The girl, the eldest, came to stand beside him. She didn't say anything, just looked out the window where the frost melted into streaks. After a while, Levi said, "You look after the others." She nodded once, proud and solemn. "You've got grit." She looked up at him. "So does Mama." Levi smiled faintly. "That she does." The doctor came in from the back, hanging up his coat. "I wired someone in the next town, said they've got work for a woman with a steady hand. Kitchen job at the schoolhouse, if she wants it." Claire overheard. "That'll do," she said without looking up. Levy turned in his chair. "You're taking it?" She nodded. "For now. Food, shelter. It's more than we had." He leaned back, ran a thumb along the rim of his mug. "You'll make it work." Claire turned to face him fully. "We will." The doctor cleared his throat and stepped out, giving them space. Levy stood. His coat was still folded by the door, saddle-packed horse stabled behind the shop. Claire came to him slowly, her fingers wiping flour from her palms. "You're leaving?" He didn't answer right away, just looked down at her hand, then up into her face. "Don't know," he said. "Was planning to, but—" He rubbed his jaw as if the words sat there and itched. "I never stayed where I wasn't needed. Never wanted to be the one who disappointed someone again." Claire's voice was quiet but steady. "You didn't disappoint us. You showed up when no one else did." He looked away. "I ain't saying I'd know how to be part of anything anymore." "You don't have to know," she said. "You just have to try." He met her eyes then. Hers were worn but bright, like something in her had weathered all it was going to and come out the other side ready to build. Not because it was easy, because it mattered. Behind them the children laughed again. Something small and silly, but it lit the room like a lamp. Levy let out a long breath, then nodded. "I'll stay a while." Claire didn't smile big, just touched his arm brief and sure. "That's how it starts," she said again. Later that day he helped fix a broken hinge on the back door. She showed him where the schoolhouse stood. The children chased each other through the snowdrifts, their coats flapping like flags. In the weeks that followed, they found a rhythm. Morning, work, evening, meals, chores shared without talk. The oldest child took to reading. The youngest learned to laugh again. And Levi, without quite realizing it, began to think of the shack in the hills less often. The road not taken didn't haunt him the way it had. Spring would come soon. He could smell it in the melt, feel it in the thawing earth beneath his boots. And one morning, as Claire handed him a mug and the sun rose behind her in the kitchen window, he said quietly, "I might fix up that little place west of town, if it's still standing." She didn't look surprised. "Plenty of work to be done," she said. He nodded. "Maybe I'm ready to do it." The children barreled in then, laughing, squabbling over a scarf. Life loud and unsteady but warm. Claire looked at Levi, soft light on her face. "Welcome home," she said. And for the first time in a long, long while he believed it. Subscribe and hear what the frontier remembers.